Hey guys, my name is Amanda Joy Anderson, and thank you for joining me today. Um, I would like to say thank you to all the new subscribers, and I appreciate all of you that are returning. And if you enjoyed this video today, please make sure you like and subscribe. Um, I would also like to introduce, I have an Etsy store. It's called Astrology and Oddities. It's more of like a hot topic version of spirituality. And I like to put just a bunch of my different creations in there. And so if you guys are interested, please check it out. Today, we are going to be talking about Pluto in Aquarius. And I'm honestly curious as into how is everyone else experiencing Pluto in Aquarius. A little backstory. This has kind of been my hyper fixation for the last year or so because Pluto in Aquarius has put me on a very interesting journey that I did not see myself in. Pluto in Aquarius has taken me to a place where I thought life was one way, and then it has transmuted that into something completely different. And for me, going through Pluto and Capricorn was really tough, especially the last degrees. I literally had everything just kind of self-combust. I lost home, businesses, relationships, and walked out of it with two little ones in Pluto and Capricorn. And through that, I was going through this internal experience of just really deep grief, just from the loss of everything that I went through and moving from a space that was unhealthy, unsafe, and moving into a space that I was safe. I was still dealing with a lot of grief and trying to figure out how to heal that grief. And internally, it felt almost like there was a monster growing inside of me, and I couldn't pinpoint where it was coming from. And I went through all of my energetic practices, and I just really tried to focus on healing. And to me, it felt like nothing was working and I wasn't gaining any segue. So I decided to search for answers elsewhere. And I ended up getting a diagnosis for PMDD because of these emotional surges. And as I continued to search for information, it led me all the way to the path of being 35 and diagnosed with ADHD and thinking that my life was all one way, and then understanding that my life was a different way, and understanding that all those feelings that I had inside of me were something called dysregulation. And I think we have many words for it. we call it the shadow side, our dark side. And really what that is our body's way of looking for comfort in spaces where we feel the need to survive. And this is really one of our primordial parts of being human. And so I want to go in today. My hyperfixation is through astrology and the human body. And I've been on the journey of learning about the human body for almost 10 years now. I'm a medical massage therapist, and I just really have a deep love for these two subjects. And today I am going to weave them together, and we are going to learn a little bit about the human body and Pluto in Aquarius and how that relates to our human body and our different functions and our reactions. And so I did create different pictures that you can take screenshots of if you want to, or if you want to sit down and take notes. We are going to be going through a lot of information, and this is going to be a little different from other videos you may have seen. And so I'm excited, and let's get started. So we are going to start off and talk a little bit about Pluto. Pluto in astrology, it can represent intensity or pressure. It can also represent transmutation, power dynamics, merging forces, our psychological mind frame, deep pain and trauma, as well as being deeply emotional. And Pluto is also generational. So Pluto going through the different signs, these are our generations. And when we look really deep into Pluto, Pluto is a yin energy, meaning it's an internal process relating to our emotional and psychological development. Also, Pluto relates to genetics and inherited genes and DNA. And when we look with Pluto being generational, we can see how certain generations have certain aspects and personalities come up as they are collective lessons to be learned. As we move to Aquarius, Aquarius symbolizes our nervous system, innovation, rebellion, fracturing and detachment, acceleration, and the individual and authenticity. Aquarius is also a yang energy and masculine and external action. Aquarius represents our environmental factors. And through Aquarius, through these different things, we start to find higher learning. Now, moving into the combination. With these two aspects combined, Pluto and Aquarius, what we see is emotional or environmental influence, emotional dysregulation, rebellion, pressure plus reaction, and referral pain. And what I mean by referral pain is that when you put pressure on a certain area, it can influence another area. And Pluto and Aquarius combined is how our emotional and psychological aspects contribute to our nervous system, causing our reactions, also known as emotional dysregulation, contributes to environmental factors that turn on certain genes. So when we're talking about genes, genetics, DNA, is that what genes turn on within your DNA is due to environmental factors. And we can even look at it this way, Like when you're, say, if you're a woman, when your grandmother was pregnant with your mother also, because you're born with all the eggs you will ever have. So your mother had your egg inside of her while your grandmother was pregnant with her. So just to see really how this influence happens with environmental factors and our DNA, these two combinations are extremely powerful and they are very deep in how certain reactions and effects that we are experiencing now are due to generations of the past, and learning from them so we can create a higher knowledge, a higher awareness about what is going on within us and externally. So we are going to roll into our emotional center, which is called the limbic system. And the limbic system is one of the oldest centers of the brain. And the limbic system determines a person's sense of safety at any given time. And the two regulatory centers are the hippocampus and the amygdala. And our hippocampus is the center for verbal memory, and it consolidates short-term memory into long-term memory. And our amygdala catalogs a history of our fear responses. And together, they stimulate what is called the HPA axis. With the HPA axis, what we have is the hypothalamus, the pituitary, and the adrenal glands. And the hypothalamus tells the pituitary, hey, we need some cortisol here. We need to become more aware. So then the pituitary sends chemicals down to the adrenal. The adrenal says, okay, you need some cortisol. You need to be aware of like what's happening in the environment, get you to safety. Cool, I got you. And so these three, this axis, it takes chemical and electrical connections to allow for appropriate responses to stressors. And this is the healthy function of it. Now, what happens when it starts to become unhealthy is when you have excessive glucocorticoid secretions, which is known as cortisol, with prolonged periods of stress. So someone that is in a unhealthy relationship, unhealthy work situation, when you continue to return to that, what happens is your HPA axis becomes off. And what happens is things like serotonin become harder to produce to kind of tell that cortisol to, chill out a little bit. And those enzymes really have a hard time producing to come up and tell the cortisol like, hey, it's not a dangerous situation here. This is just, everyday life. But through prolonged periods, that what happens is your hippocampus starts to shrink and an enlargement of the amygdala starts to happen. And this can create a problem with what is an appropriate reaction to stressors. Really understanding when we are having large emotional reactions to small stressors, that our HPA axis is probably out of alignment and we're having issues really determining what the safety is. And in that case, our amygdala is kind of the front seat driver when we are supposed to be functioning from the prefrontal cortex and being able to have rational thought in our reactions to things instead of really operating from this deep emotional primal center. So this is known as the polyvagal theory. And the polyvagal theory is controversial. Some people say, hey, like it's not, that's not everything. And I agree, it's not everything. But what it is a good representation of the flow of how we experience this in our bodies. And so at the bottom, we have our parasympathetic nervous system, and this is through the ventral vagus. Yeah, and this is through the ventral vagus nerve. And when we are in this state, we are chill, happy, everything's going pretty cool. We're in the present moment, we have compassion, and it is really when we're in like our healthiest state of self. But what happens is when certain noises, people, conversations, all of that stuff, what happens is when that starts to elevate, it could be our own emotions and some kind of thought we're thinking of, money problems. What happens is then we start to become a little bit dysregulated. And in this space, this is when we enter the sympathetic nervous system. And the sympathetic nervous system is where you see fight or flight. And people that are flighting, that's really trying to move away from the situation, whether if that's fear, anxiety, panic, worrying, concerns. And if people that are going towards it, more of a Mars-based approach, we're looking at more rage, anger, irritation, and frustration. And then the level above that, so what happens is it accelerates. So then it goes up. And at the tippy top, we have our dorsal vagus nerve, which is part of the parasympathetic nervous system. But because the parasympathetic nervous system is also at the bottom, how I remember it is chill, not chill, and busted. And that is where the dorsal vagus is. And at the top, this is really when we start to disassociate, like too much is going on. So then we're like fixated on our phones or projects. We can become numb, depression. This is where we can feel shame and shut down. And for those of you that have ADHD or autism, this is where burnout happens. And so as we elevate through the nervous system, this wave coming down, what happens is as you're deactivating, the nervous system is deactivating, so it's trying to calm down. So when you're already in elevated states, such as the sympathetic nervous system or up into the dorsal vagal, what happens is small things can trigger that HPA axis and the cortisol rises again in the deactivation stage. So it's important to really, when you are in those stages, especially like in the dorsal stage, to really find comfort if you can, whether if that's like a comfort movie or just really sometimes it's lights off, ear pods in just to like block out any type of sensory. And when you're in the parasympathetic nervous system up with the dorsal, any kind of like somatic exercise is really helpful. There is the butterfly, and then you tap on your chest. Some people can handle tapping. I'm not one of those people. I can't handle tapping. That like elevates my dorsal vagal. I'm like, ugh, I don't want to be touched. So for me, it's like just being in a space where you are safe, where it's quiet, where, you could be wrapped up in a blanket with all the little squish pillows and everything, and really create your own little emotional cave, which is super helpful. But going down into the sympathetic nervous system, this is where we become the Zen master flex of our lives, meaning flexible with our responses, but really having the approach to be Zen-like in periods of chaos. And the first step to noticing when we are in our sympathetic nervous system is just awareness, noticing that we are in our sympathetic nervous system when things are activating. For me, what I do is I like to call it taking a seat inside myself. And that's allowing myself to be an observer of what is happening in the moment. And this can be super hard, especially if your nervous system is geared towards more fight than flight. This can be super hard, and it's about training yourself in your reactions. And this is where we start to gain this like Zen master and understanding and really creating awareness of our own dysregulation within our body. Like I said before, some people call it like the dark side. Some people call it the shadow side. And from how I understand it within my own body and reactions, it is really my body trying to say, this is bringing up a situation for me that makes me feel unsafe. And through this situation, it's triggering a response. And this is where we really see Pluto. Because Pluto, because it represents pressure, if you step on a Lego, that is Pluto. And that Lego is Pluto, and you step on it, what happens is that signal of that pain travels all the way up your spinal cord, up to the brain, then goes back down and then out and expands. And that reaction, that is Aquarius. And understanding that Pluto creates pressure to create a reaction. So for those of you with Pluto in a uneven house, so 1, 3, 5, 7, all the way up, you guys are going to have more external pressures, whereas people with having Pluto in a even number house, they are going to experience it more internally, internal pressures. But regardless, there's still going to be environmental factors that are triggering certain responses internally within us. And I would love to hear and have you guys share what it is that you are experiencing. And are you experiencing external triggers really trying to push up certain reactions, certain generational reactions through, it could be, the environmental as far as like workplace. It could be through like family patterns, reactions that are coming out, and really zoning in and trying to see and find out where the origin of these reactions are coming from. And even if you don't have the origin, what is a different practice that you can use when that pressure is applied? And this is really expansive in our way of how to deal with emotional dysregulation. So I love evolutionary astrology. That is the type of astrology that I study. And what I love about this is that Pluto in evolutionary astrology has a polarity point, and that polarity point is Leo, because it's in Aquarius. So the polarity point of Aquarius is Leo. And really, if we start to harness practices, Leo practices, this can really shift our nervous system. And so with Leo, the sunrise helps correct our circadian rhythm. What happens is when we wake up in the morning and we say we don't typically wake up with the sunrise, what happens, even though that when we are waking up in the morning, we have cortisol levels. And these cortisol levels are kind of like a wild stallion. And they just kind of take off and through stressors throughout the day. So when you wake up with the sunrise, what happens is this doubles your cortisol, and it's really like taking the reins on this wild stallion of our nervous system and applying some control to it. And with the circadian rhythm and waking up with the sunrise and having it double it, if you put exercise on top of that, it doubles that. So what happens is you have this huge ball of energy, because cortisol is not necessarily bad. It's not bad. I think we claim it as bad. What happens, what makes cortisol unhealthy is when we stay in unhealthy situations too long, that cortisol starts to release, and it's like that wild stallion, and it's bucking all over the place for all these different triggers. But if we take control of our own cortisol and really put the reins on it, what happens is when you wake up in the morning with the sunrise and you apply exercise to that right in the morning, that cortisol that starts off as a big ball then depletes gradually throughout the day. So that way, when it's nighttime, you're ready for sleep. Since I have ADHD and my nervous system is all over the place, this may be super helpful if you have an extremely sensitive nervous system. Just for stress wise, for being able to really take the reins on your nervous system. I would like to compare it like waking up in the morning with the sunrise and exercising like taking a Prozac, only you can sleep at night. You are able to have this gradual decrease throughout the day, and that zone, the parasympathetic nervous system in the ventral area, you are able to maintain that for longer periods of time, and it won't be so easy to push you into the sympathetic nervous system. So that way you're not on that ladder constantly climbing throughout the day, but you're on a gradual increase and then slope. And this changed my life. Waking up with the sunrise. Obviously, everyone has different schedules, different work schedules. Life can be, exhausting, and we all have different times that we wake up. But if you are able to do that, the benefit for your nervous system is just endless. And so I want to go into the heart. Leo's symbol is also the heart. And with that, aerobic exercise, which is dancing, brisk walking, swimming, running, cycling, jump roping, and there is so many more. But going into that and working out your cardiovascular system, these benefits are large and they are tenfold throughout the body, and being able to help and ease any type of emotional dysregulation. And it keeps us in our ventral vagus area for much longer. So that way we're not constantly hiking up the ladder of our nervous system. And then also playing. Leo is known for children and being childlike and being able to play. So things like puzzles and using our imagination and dancing and all these signals are going and lighting up, and they're lighting up the prefrontal cortex. And this is what we are looking for when we're looking to do like neuroplasticity and working with our brain and our internal cycles and systems. And all of these activities aid in healthy functions of the prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex is responsible for rational thinking and telling the limbic system, our emotional system, to kind of, it's okay. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'm so excited to share it with you because it's been one of my hyper fixations for the last year. And I'm happy to like finally get it out of me, because it's been like just circulating, and I've been just having the darndest of time trying to like put it all together in a way that was practical and understandable. And so thank you guys so much for showing up for this, and I appreciate you, and have a beautiful day. Bye-bye.